You can kind of see over here how we put them on chalkboards.
Then you have to, once you photocopy that, you have to physically cut them out, each piece. And, you know, we got started doing this, and we had the, you know, cute little scissors, and we've sort of, you know, you just kind of, you want them to look nice when they're done, cut them out, and then you store them and label them. We store them in plastic bags, just Ziploc bags. On that cover, it says what the center is, how many total pieces are in that bag, because you'd be surprised how, you know, one gets slid down the wall and you forget it. And, you know, it'll say how many question pieces. If there's a key in that bag will tell me that there's a key, and everything's in there. The more keys that you have, the nicer it is if you have a student teacher or an intern come in, you know, they can stand there. But as you guys know, once you've done this skill over and over, I mean, I can walk over to a center without a key and grade it in about 10 seconds, you know.
And at first, you know, this was really an evolution, because at first we were writing everything out on note cards, and you can see, this is the first year we did them. You can see everything is handwritten on note cards, and as we started to get smarter about it, we typed it all up, so, you know, if we needed to print a new copy, we could just do that without having to put too much fuss into it.
The other thing is, when we were handwriting them, I would use the centers. At the end of the day, I would bag them up, give them to Mr. Olson, and he would do the centers the next day. We couldn't do them on the same day. We couldn't share centers. Once we typed them, we printed them out twice. You make yours, you store yours, I'll make mine, I'll store mine.
Yes, we have 2 copies of everything. One for, and especially if I create a center, I make a copy for Mrs. Scott and Mr. Olson. He creates a center, same thing, she, same exact thing.
Yeah.
Next, we do actually have some examples, and these pictures are actual pictures of our students at school. We have thousands of them at this point. You know, this is our 3rd year doing this, and these are one of their favorite. And you know, we didn't really hit on the emotional support students that we had. Talk about a fantastic classroom activity for students who have behavioral ADHD. I mean, they're moving around, they're talking, you know, it is such a nice environment for them to learn. And what we found is they excelled so much, especially with things that we thought that they would struggle with. These are inference activities, and they're riddles. And the students, it's probably one of the favorite things that we do with the kids. You know, they have to read the riddle, and then they just use a little sticky pad to put on there the answer. And the kids really enjoy them. And the emotional support kids we found just excelled, and they became like a part of the class, because before people were like, oh, here they go again. You know, they're moving, they're interrupting. And when this happened, you know, it was just such a nice environment for them to show what they could do without having their behaviors and their inability to sit in the seat really interfere with their progress.
We've all had ADHD kids in our class, and they're disruptive. I mean, they're disruptive to themselves, they're disruptive to the kids around them, and all of a sudden, centers became something that, I mean, I'm thinking one student in particular, when they stand at the wall, because this is a seated, but you can see how they, most of the time they stand at a wall, he would literally stand and jump in place. He would be thinking, and he would be jumping up and down, and it was like, okay, in a normal classroom environment, if I'm trying to teach, if they're trying to do a worksheet and he is bouncing in his chair like that, it becomes a disruption. It was like nothing weird going on. Kids are walking, kids are shaking their hands, kids are moving back and forth, and there is, you know, this student jumping up and down. And at one point, because this was the year centers were new, he turned around and he said, I love this! I love this! I was like, thank you!
And on that same note, we had students, like my daughter, for instance, who were becoming very ostracized for being the smart kids in class. They were the most popular kids in the class. Everybody wanted them in their group. They said, you know, we know that that kid's going to help us do well. So and we had a student in particular who, you know, had a very difficult situation. She had a baby very young. She was very socially quiet, you know, didn't interact with a lot of students, but
didn't have very many friends.
Yes, extremely intelligent. The year she did this, she just couldn't believe how popular she became. You know, she made friends. She was able to be picked first for every single group, you know, that had happened to her never in life. So, you know, it really kind of changed the dynamic and obviously changed their, you know, how they felt about school. You know, they knew, you know, that was going to be something that would bring attention to them, you know, if they were...
It's not something that we planned.
Right.
That was one of those happy accidents that we thought, I wasn't expecting this. Abby is the student we're both thinking of. I mean, she became the quiet, mousy girl in the back that didn't speak, that no one really knew and no one really talked to the girl that people would say, we can't do centers today, Abby's not here. Abby's not here today. Oh, okay, we'll do, we can wait, we'll do them tomorrow. And everyone would say, you already picked Abby. I wanted Abby. And she was like, oh my gosh. Like, all of a sudden she's eating with kids at lunch. And, I mean, that was not something that we planned. That was not something that we said, oh, hey, let's do centers because, gosh, socially this would really help.
Yeah. And these are just some examples.
And you have copies of all of them.
You have another packet that just has these pages on them, just so you can kind of see, what standards we were hitting. And believe me, we have so many for each standard. We just kind of pulled one out.
Yeah. They have a direction sheet. They have the standard they're hitting, and this is typically what it looks like. And there's different examples. And we did a close-up to see, so you can kind of see what you're doing. But you had, like in this particular instance, color didn't matter. There's all different colors. We just took, whatever cardstock pieces we had left, made photocopies, and it was no big deal.
Yeah, this is synonyms and
Sometimes
antonyms.
color makes it more difficult. Here is a center that when it's mixed up, everything is the same color. There's no help to them to say, okay, put the orange together or the blue together. Right. They really have to match them up.
Not only that, with this center, we switch the language around. Sometimes we say opposite, sometimes we say antonym. So they really are making those connections with the vocabulary in their mind, and same thing with synonyms. Sometimes it says what is a word that means the same as enormous, and then sometimes it says synonym. So they see that connection and they're able to, make that outside of the...
This is an example of plagiarism. No, this is an example of, we had a workbook that was so great, but it was, we all do it. But it was such a great workbook,
we don't
but
sell
really it wasn't, it wasn't that difficult for the kids. When the answers are all there and you read the thing and you go A, B, C, D, okay, we could do this in 5 minutes. But once I retyped this, I printed out the stories, copied those on cardstock, printed out the answers, and all of a sudden they have these 4 answers and they're mixed up with the other 40 answers. All of a sudden something that was really simple became a little more difficult. And this one we did all in the same color. And you can see that here's all the wrong answers.
Yeah.
Here's what they end up with, and this is everything they had to muddle through.
Yeah, and what we start to do now is based on the class that we're teaching, if you are working with a class that's higher functioning, we may take the labels away. And you'll see that in the video where they have to categorize, personification, simile, metaphor, and then tell us which category is which. Yet while with our students with IEPs or students who are lower functioning, we would have those titles up there, so kind of remind them, and sometimes even the definition. So you can manipulate each center to meet different levels of learning, which really is helpful.
And again, you have these in your classroom. You will go back to school in September, in August. You have these worksheets in your file cabinets, in your folders. Okay, how can I take something that I've always used and now make it more interesting? More interesting for me, more interesting for them. So I can take this worksheet that I've always done, or this vocabulary list, instead of saying, here's your piece of paper, here's your 20 words, write the definition, study them. Now we're going to say, we're going to introduce these words by, you're going to go up to the board and you're going to move these definitions around. Not a huge difference. Skills-wise, not a huge difference for your kids. Sit down, write it on a piece of paper, go up to the board, move it around. But all of a sudden, oh, this is something different. I get to stand up. I get to talk to a partner. I get to move around at the board. All of a sudden, something that you've always done that kind of has been stale has a whole new life to it.
Roots, we've also, we started doing a lot with root words and Greek and Latin root words, and so this is just an example, they would have the word, the actual, what is the root of the word, and then they would match it to the meaning. And this really starts to translate into other vocabulary words and say, well, wait a minute, I know what graph means. So they're able to break down and find out meanings of words that are unknown in context. Fact and opinion. This is
news article.
Yes, this is our local newspaper. So they were all relevant to the kids. It was actually WJPA, which is a Washington news station. We went online. Very short articles. We printed out the articles, printed out the titles, and they have to match the title. And then they have to say, is this a fact or is this an opinion article? And we also
tried
did
to
letters.
just, in these examples,